Welcome to the Gold Doctor podcast. This is episode 8. This is the last episode of the first season of the Gold Doctor podcast. And we're talking about fear of goals. And we'll begin with a couple of quotes. Especially during Women's History Month, I wanted to focus on two women here. The first is the late Dr. Maya Angelou. And she says, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, and how you can still come out of it." Next is from J.K. Rowling. And she simply says, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I built my life." So if we can review and preview a little bit, we'll review our goals, which we wanted to make sure that are measurable, observable, and doable, are indicators of motivation, these three: active choice, mental effort, and persistence. And then we also talked about attributions of success, but more particularly locus of control, and our internal locus of control, this idea that within us is the ability to at least control what we can that's in front of us, rather than blame or worry about what other people are doing with our external locus of control. So I really wanted to talk about today what happens if we are afraid to fail or afraid to succeed. To be honest, I did not want this session to end because I would have to take account of what I did right and what I did wrong. A real reckoning must be had. Yet, I was afraid of my own critique. It's one of the challenges of living with a combined mental illness such as anxiety and depression. Now, I'm very transparent, particularly on my social media, and I tell people about my issues, but I can sometimes become so focused on my pain, I'm not even focused on the outcomes, good or bad. Thus, I didn't finish the last episode on the exact date. I like to post on Sundays with the latest podcasts, but I had to go back and remind myself, I'm the producer of this show, and I will finish it when I'm ready. Thus, here I am. Now, in order to kind of understand some of this idea of fear of failure, I'm going to share a couple examples from my life. And as an elementary school student, I always saw myself as someone who just did not fit in. Whether it was my hair, my skin color, or just a real strong sense of justice, of fairness, I too often felt I was fighting against broader things that did not want me. I often felt rejected at school. And that could be anxiety, that can be worry, that may have been some other things, but sometimes there were some very real things, like people would say, derogatory things about my skin color or say things. I just didn't engage in those kind of back and forth with people. However, I would fight. I would sock people. If it went too far, I'd give several warnings, but then we'd get into it. Now, fortunately, that stopped when I was 12 and started taking karate, and you've heard about that in past episodes. But I did start this season, this talking about my trips to the principal's office. And these trips caused me to see myself as a poor student. And eventually I acclimated to the idea of this poor little boy who couldn't quite figure out school. So fast forward some 25 years later, and I'm finishing my doctoral program. And I had to reckon with the reality that I'm going to go from the kid who was always in trouble and who now helps kids as a school psychologist to the one who teaches teachers and principals full time. And that was a huge identity shift for me. I wasn't quite ready to be called doctor by anybody or professor and I wasn't directly aware of it. So how did I find this out? I had writer's block. I was a month away from submitting my dissertation. I had just one chapter left. The writing up till this time, I was consistent and frequent. I would write every Sunday for 3 hours. Boom. I would write at least 20 pages a week and read over 300 pages a week as well. So I was on a good clip. I was moving towards finishing my dissertation. I had one chapter left. One chapter. However, once I was offered a job as a college professor, deep inside my little boy head, and that little bad boy who was sitting outside of the principal's office took out all his fear on me and would not let me write. Now, I did not recognize that little boy at first until my mentor and fraternity brother pointed him out to me. He pointed him out to me in regards to, you're going to change. How you interact with other professionals will be different. You will be a college professor as opposed to the school psychologist who helps people, who's the one who's in charge. You'll also be an assistant professor, a new person on the block who's learning how to do this college thing. But he reminded me, he said, you've done harder things. You can do it, but yeah, take your time. Settle in with that idea that it's okay for you to be this new part of yourself. This was your goal. This is what you wanted. Once I started calling myself doctor, I was no longer that bad boy waiting for the principal. I was the teacher of the principal. I was the teacher of the teacher and of future school psychologists. Yeah, I was afraid of my own success, largely for what it meant to my identity. The only way I was able to really take on the full identity of doctor was as an extension of what people had done for me, whether it was my mom, who had always encouraged me, continued to encourage me to go to college, to go to a historically black college, to go on to graduate school, to write poetry, to go out and try new things. Or it was my dad when, I didn't think I could help him build a fence or lay cement or, conquer math. They were always behind me. I'm almost tearing up thinking about how they've always supported me. But going through this new phase of life and having a goal of earning a doctoral degree was just the beginning, right? You might be a student in college. You might be somebody who's moving up in your career. You might be someone who just simply wants to start a new business and sell the great products that you have to this group, so you're able to not only support yourself, but maybe support your family or support a cause or organization that you're excited about. You might have been studying a hobby, right? Or studying something that's really, really important to you, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's being a volunteer firefighter, whatever it may be, you're working towards this new identity once you reach these goals. And sometimes you can experience a block. So I would think if you are stuck, right, you may want to ask yourself, what is keeping you from accepting change, even when it is good or something you said you wanted? It may not be like mine, right, where you're worried about your identity. But I do find we often accept a part of our identity that indicates we are incapable of change. Let's say we've been a certain weight and we no longer want to be that weight. And we're trying to move into this new weight category, right? When it comes to our own health as well. And we even build excuses and rationalizations around it, right? Especially if we're in pain, we could even say, I'm okay with this level of pain. I can be just fine with that new title. I'd rather not have that raised because of too much new responsibility, or those doctor bills will be too much. And these are all very real things. Sometimes rationalizations can take on the form of very real things. But we also have to watch out for being too positive in the midst of our growth, that we do not at least acknowledge the emotions, both good and bad, because emotions are simply information. But they may be information that can spur us on to sometimes good things. So, for example, mild anxiety before a big event or talk can sometimes show we at least care about ourselves or others if we're thinking of this idea of toxic positivity. Sometimes some people are so positive and they're so overwhelmingly bothersome and disgusting sometimes. Forgive the over embellishment there, but sometimes there's these people who kind of annoy you with everything's just going to be all right. Everything's just going to be sunny and rosy, and you keep running into failure. The only reason you feel something is because it's important, and it's okay to feel something because it's important. Man, and it's okay to fear success or failure. However, if the goals you've had and goals you have developed will make your life better or others better. Focus more on the purpose and less on the identity change. Take the information from strong emotion, not just as the end, but as a starting point to gauge how important this new phase or identity may be in your life. It's okay to have many identities as long as you stay in the same reality. I'll say that. One of my favorite is Clark Kent and Superman, and another of my favorite is, and you may know him as Mr. Dynamite, the godfather of soul, the man who can make your bladder splatter and your liver quiver. I almost couldn't even get it out. Mr. James Brown, or the late James Brown, right? Many identities, but he was still focused on the same reality to let you experience that soul in your life, right? So it's all right to go ahead and be the person who used to be a certain weight. It's all right to go ahead and be the person who used to be a white belt, who's now a blue belt, who may go on to become a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or karate or whatever else you're studying. It's all right to go from being a person who is the first in their family to go to college to now you're graduating from college and even pursuing graduate degrees. Right? It's okay. But when you reach your goals, remember you're still you. Just an updated version of you. You were good before and you're going to be good afterwards. It's all right. It's okay to fear success or feel failure, but it's not okay to stay there. All right? It's not okay to let it paralyze you from things that are important to you and others. Right? So I just want to say thank you for listening this season. We have completed our first 8 episodes, and we look forward to another season with interviews of colleagues and people who are experts at meeting goals in their field. So look out for that coming this summer. But for now, we'll have the Goal Doctor Facebook and Instagram pages coming the second week of March, as well as pages for Dr. Brandon Gamble, which will be a little bit more comprehensive. Rather than just goals, I'm going to talk about all kinds of stuff I'm interested in with that podcast. Also, if you really like overcoming stories, listen to the Our Black History podcast, hosted by my sister Terry Gamble and me. Our first 2 guests were our parents, and they're retired educators, and they share keys to overcoming challenges. Also, we just recorded a great episode with a family friend and activist for Native American and African American people. I'm looking forward to folks hearing about him. His story is incredible. That said, I'm the Goal Doctor, Brandon Gamble. Thanks for listening. Please share with others if this has been helpful for you. I hope you enjoy each moment in the journey as you continue to reach your goals.